Hello, everyone. Welcome to Self Knowledge. Today, we are going to see this very interesting topic. Today, we are going to talk about the states and events, which is the lecture number 19 of the Phase A lectures of the Self Knowledge course that we broadcast through this page every Wednesdays and Fridays. And well, the topic of the states and event is very interesting because you are going to see that it's very based on a practical life. And if we get to understand it, we will learn to live like in a more conscious way because we are going to learn to correctly combine the inner states with the external events that we live. And to understand this, it's important that we start by analyzing the different contrasts that we find in life because they are going to make us understand how many times external appearances do not correspond to what is lived internally. And we can see, for example, very wealthy people, people who have all the luxuries that other people could only wish for. They have very big houses, beautiful cars, plenty of money, beautiful families. However, when we go to their internal lives, they suffer terribly because they suffer from worries, they suffer from diseases, from heartbreaks, from betrayals, from losses, from they have also problems of impotence and they can suffer from that. Or they suffer because even though they have it all, they still have like the same existential void that has not been filled because that existential emptiness cannot be filled with money, with luxuries, with prestige, or with fame because we already can see the case of famous singers or actors or people with great social power who suffer uh, from depression and who ends up committing suicide. And it is that is actually very surprising because whoever doesn't have all of that, whoever don't have achieved uh, the things that those people have reached, they think that their sadness, their dissatisfaction, or their existential emptiness will be healed or will be filled um, if they get all of that they are going to achieve happiness if they get all of that, if they get a lot of money, or if they get fame. And it is not like that. We don't understand that happiness never comes from the external events or the external things, but from our inner state. And well, in contrast to this, we can see many times how people who have very little, who are not what is socially understood as someone successful, we can see that most of the time these people can live happily. They constantly smile, and you can see that most of sometimes they truly enjoy the small details of life. And it is for that reason that we must understand that happiness doesn't depend on external events, but on our inner state, on what is how inside of us we are living those external situations. Many times we don't understand why we are unhappy, why we suffer, and it is actually because we don't know how to live intelligently. And well, to get to understand this, let's see what exactly is an event and what exactly is a inner state. So we then learn how to combine them wisely. So, what is an event? They are things that happen externally. For example, today we have lived many events. In the morning, we had the situation of the breakfast with your family, or in that well later the event of going to work. At lunch, you had the event of um, the lunch with your coworkers. In the afternoon, the event of the meeting with your boss. Or yeah, and in the early night, you had the event of having an argument with your partner. And those are like the different events that we can see in a day, the things that happen to us. And if we talk about our lives, if someone asks us about our lives, we are going to see that we are going to mention different events, such as the things that we lived when we were kids, when we graduate from school, our wedding, our yeah, like all the things when your first son, the birth of your son, you are going to tell your lives as a like a succession of events, and there you're going to include names, surnames, dates, etc. But actually, that is not the complete story, since we tend to omit the most important part, that is the internal aspect, the mood or the inner state that we had at those events, that usually are the ones, the inner state, what truly defines the quality of that event that we lived. And that like let us know what is an inner state. An inner state is no other thing than the mood that we have in front of any event. That is the inner state. So we must note that the events are external while the states are internal. That is why we say inner states. And they are actually, the inner states are like the fundamental part of an event, because as I said, they will determine how we experience that event. We can see, for example, a party like I have here, and you can or we can expect that in a party everyone will be happy, everyone will be singing or dancing, whatever. But we are going to see that it's not like that. Not everyone at the party has the same spirit. Not everyone will have the same mood. Some will be happy, others will be bored, others will be worried. So everyone will experience the same event in a totally different way. Why? Because each of them has their own inner state that is not the correct state in front of that event. And that is why it's important that we learn how to wisely combine events with inner states. And something that we need to see is that there are certain ways in which we usually wrongly combine states and events. Like, for example, many times we have inner states that, although they seem to match with the event that we are living, is in reality like totally out of control. For example, I put you here an example of someone in a funeral who feels like totally dejected, who cries uncontrollably, screams, who wants to die, and even and you can think that that person has the inner state that person has matches with that situation, but not at all, because that person is totally out of control. Or on the other hand, we can see a person on a celebration who gets drunk, get up and dance on the table, takes the clothes, gets out of control. And even though that inner state corresponds to that event, it is totally out of control. And we need to start like observing when we can have inner states that, even though they seem to correspond to the event, we can get out of control. Other times, the inner state that we have definitely do not correspond to the outer event. Like the person who is crying in the middle of a party, doesn't like correspond at all, or the one who is laughing and making jokes at the funeral. If we analyze it, we can begin to understand that this is something that we can commonly do. And having an incorrect state before an event, whether it seems to correspond or not, is what brings us so many complicated situations. and it's what don't let us like take out the wisdom or the lesson that every situation have for us, because we with our wrong inner states are not letting the consciousness to express and to live the different situations of life, but we are letting our psychological defects to manifest and to make us have a wrong inner state before the different situations. Another thing that we can see is that sometimes we live events that we have waited for so long. And that when we are living those events, we feel like something was missing, that it wasn't what we expected it would be. Like, for example, the person who waited so impatiently for her wedding day and was making so many preparations to make that event, something perfect and magical. At the precise moment of the event, that person can be so worried about every detail of the party, for example, of the people, of the cooks, and they arrived later, or the musicians didn't play what she wanted, etc. And because of that, instead of having a magical and a special moment that she hoped it would be, that event became simply a tedious and even annoying time for her. But other times you can see that things that were not planned at all, but that at the moment of being given, we are having us an appropriate inner state, they are very pleasant and very beneficial. But we can also see that many times the event that we live can be directly caused by an inner state that we have. For example, we can see here an event of the death of a person, that someone committed suicide. That was the event. But that event, when we analyze it, was caused because of the inner state that the person had, because that person didn't know how to modify those continuous inner states of sadness or depression and end up committing suicide. Or you can see that because of not knowing how to modify a wrong state of anger, of violence, of resentment, we end up having the living the event of having a serious argument with other, or to killing someone, or to have ourselves killed because of that inner state. And that is why we really need to pay attention to this and to start like self-observing, to discover that when bad wrong inner states are like being nested within us. And well, other things that can be pleasant, that can be like good for us, can actually be originated by the inner state that we had at that moment, because it's not only it doesn't, what we have in our interior is what is going to attract the different situations to our lives, in our lives, to happen. And the thing is that we need to learn to have control over ourselves, because being in control is very different, and it is what we need to achieve. And when we learn not to let our psychological defects to take us from one inner state to another, because that is what they always do, as we are internally a legion, as we have plenty of psychological defects that each one of them feel and act and think in a different way. That is the reason why we are all the time changing moods. This moment I can feel happy, I can feel like, yeah, with a lot of spirit, but at another moment I can feel sad, or I can feel like dejected, or at any other moment I can feel like, I don't know, lazy, or another moment I can feel like feeling lost and I want to watch porn, etc. And that is because of that internal multiplicity that is all the time taking us from one inner state to another. And if we start eliminating all of that, we are going to allow our consciousness to manifest itself in us, because all those psychological defects are the ones that have our consciousness trapped and conditioned. And if we learn to eliminate them, that we have explained that, I think, all the lectures, we are going to be letting our consciousness constantly manifest in us, and we will be in our way to becoming wise men, right? Because a wise man is the one that can be cheerful, but never ever full of crazy frenzy. Everyone can be out of control, and he can feel cheerful, but he will not let himself get out of control, because he is in that state of self-observation and eliminating all the psychological defects manifesting, so he don't become identified with that situation. So that is a wise man. He can be sad in a sad situation, but never hopeless and never downcast, because he's not identifying himself. He's not letting his psychological defects to come and to make him feel this and to make him feel that. No, he's eliminating all of that, and he's there in that situation, and he will never be hopeless. He can be serene in the midst of violence. Everyone else is identified with the violent situation that is being lived, and they are angry and they are arguing and they are, but a wise man can have the control to stay calm in the midst of violence, to stay abstemious at the orgy, to stay chaste among loss, because he is already working on his psychological defects. He is rescuing the wisdom that these psychological defects have trapped. So he now understands the value of his sexual energy. He understands how those defects let you or make you make many mistakes. So now he has the wisdom and the power to maintain a control, a balance in no matter what situation. And if we want to achieve this state of self-control, it is necessary that we learn to correctly combine the inner states with the external events, since that is the only way to start living intelligently. And well, what are the steps to achieve the right combination of states and events? Well, there are 4 steps. The first one is to practice the self-observation. This is the first thing and the most important one. This is like this is what we need to, or the way we need to be the whole day, from moment to moment, because the self-observation is the one that will allow us to identify our inner state and the psychological defects that are generating this inner state. So from the very moment that we wake up, that you open your external eyes, you should also open your third eye, which is the sense of self-observation, that is not going to be looking outside like these 2 eyes, but to the inside, to what is happening inside of us. So we need to be the whole day in that constant state, in self-observation. That is going to allow us to discover what is the inner state in which we find ourselves at every moment. For example, at this very moment that I am talking to you, that you are listening to me, I am in an inner state, you are in an inner state, and with the sense of self-observation, we can be able to discover what is the inner state. If, for example, you are listening to me, but instead of having the correct mood of receiving the information, you are feeling anxiety, or you are feeling worry, or you are feeling like bored, or you are feeling like lazy, like oh my god. There, you are having a wrong inner state in front of the event that you are living. So that is the first thing that you are going to discover with the self-observation. You are also going to discover, if you look further to our interior, what are the psychological defects that are generating that wrong inner state. So you are going to observe that you are feeling worry, and it's because you are thinking on what you have to do, and there you can discover all the defects that are actually making you have this inner state that you currently have. The second step will be to always see or to always be aware of what is the event that I am living or that I have to live. Most of the time we take it for granted. Most of the time we don't make this logical confrontation. So if we are going to meet someone, let's put an example to explain this. We had an argument with our boss because of something, and our boss later called us to talk with us, and that is the event that we are going to live. The first thing that we need to be is always in self-observation to discover the fear, the anxiety, or the resentment, or all the eyes that are talking in your mind, saying this, saying that, and all the things that you are feeling. You are going to discover all of that with self-observation, and by practicing the psychological death, asking your Divine Mother to eliminate. Mentally, you ask her, Divine Mother, eliminate this and this and this. All that you are observing, you ask her to disintegrate that. So you stay in the present moment and you see what is the event that you are going to live. I'm going to talk with my boss. That is the event. And then you make the third step, a logical confrontation to find out what is the internal inner state that is appropriate for that event that you are going to live. And you are going to find out if you listen to your heart, let's say, to your consciousness, that state will always be a state of keeping yourself in balance, to eliminate all the psychological defects that manifest, and to let your consciousness speak to solve things in the best way possible, etc. That is, for example, what you can get out from making this logical confrontation. So you go to live that event with the correct inner state, with the correct mood, because you eliminated the resentment of the argument that you had. You eliminate all those defects that are telling you what to say, how to revenge, how to make your point. You eliminate all that because that is pride, and you eliminate that. And that is anger. I eliminate all that. And I now feel fear that my boss is going to fire me. That fear is not part of my consciousness, and Divine Mother eliminates this. And you go with the correct mood, which is living the present moment, in the here and now, letting your consciousness to manifest, know your psychological defects. And what would be the next step to maintain or to stay from the beginning to the end of that event in control? That is, practicing the psychological death, you are going to be able to stay in control. So if you go and your boss start asking you things, and you start or remembering things that you said, and you start feeling like this one, that in your emotion that start feeling like this pleasure, I don't know how to say it, that feeling, you eliminate it. Mentally, Divine Mother eliminate this, and you keep here. If you manage to stay in control, you are going to discover many important things. And it's that you can actually get to understand what is the point of the other person. You can get to understand, because it is your consciousness manifesting, what is the right thing. You are going to be able to understand what is moving on behind that situation. What is the lesson that you need to learn from that situation? And if you keep yourself in control, eliminating all the psychological defects that wants to manifest, so you let your consciousness manifest, you are going to be living that event with the correct inner state, and you are going to be able to rescue the wisdom of that event. And the same with anything that we are going to live, to anything. It is important that we learn not to keep, nor to admit the wrong states to be in our interior. Why? Because the wrong states, as I was saying, they are like magnets that attract all the external events. So we need to understand that this has like a total relationship with that law of attraction, or that law of correspondence that says that as within, so without. It is so true because according to the inner state that we constantly have, all the circumstances that we will attract to our lives will be. Our inner life is like our inner state is like that magnet. And if we constantly admit wrong states, you can see that, for example, someone who all the time is with that bad temper, with anger, is all the time like angry, is constantly attracting violent situations into his life. Someone who is all the time feeling that he's feeling sorry about himself, feeling like he's miserable, that he has no luck, no he has no luck in love, or he has no luck with money or whatever. Actually, keeping that incorrect inner state is what is attracting all those situations. We have wrong states, and we can have very wrong states that we should never ever admit into ourselves if we really want to awaken our consciousness and to self-realize. For example, pessimism is terrible. It's that constant feeling that things are going to go wrong for us, that they are not going to pay me that money, that such a person, no, he will not do that, he will not do me that favor. No. Or, no, I'm not going to get that job. Or, no, I'm never going to find a partner. That is the pessimism, and that is terrible because that very wrong inner state will attract lot of misfortunes to keep coming to our lives. So we keep like feeding those inner states, because when we think that bad things are going to happen, we when we experience them, we feel that we were right. Yeah, I was right by feeling. I knew that I was not going to get that job. I knew it, and then I'm feeding that inner state, that wrong inner state, that is actually the one that is attracting that things to happen to me. It becomes like a vicious circle, in which we are attracting things and living things, attracting things and living things, but we don't make ourselves aware that we are the ones attracting those situations, and that if we don't cut with that by working on our inner states, we will not be able to get to modify anything in our lives, because we are like the magnets inside of us. Our wrong inner states are the magnets that are attracting all of those situations. Another very wrong state that we should never admit in ourselves is hatred. Hate is perhaps the lowest feeling that a person can experience, and that lower how I say that low, when something comes down. I don't remember the word. Sorry. That English is not like my first language. It will like make our consciousness low every time, more and more low, because hate is something like very heavy to our consciousness. So that is something that we should never admit in ourselves, as feelings of hatred, never. Or the melancholy, which is like that, those states of sadness and depression, because staying in these states make those psychological defects depression, self-consideration, melancholy, steal from us lots of energy. And we will never have the disposition or the spirit to make the inner work that we have to do to awaken our consciousness. Self-consideration, terrible. In the previous lecture, we talked about that, talking about the psychological song and keeping in ourselves, in our interior, those resentments and those feelings that we are victims and those concepts that we are very good and that people is always bad to us, don't allow us to awaken our consciousness, doesn't allow our consciousness to express, because they are very wrong inner states. So we must never admit in ourselves under any circumstance to let those wrong inner states like nest in ourselves. And well, the last thing that I want to explain you in today's lecture is in relation to the personal events. We must know that we all have personal events. Life is nothing more than a succession of events that are constantly changing. And it happens that if we are not working, or if we are not like working in our interior, if we are not making this work to get to know ourselves, all the situations in life, those events are going to be just that, events, things that happen in our lives. But when we start working on ourselves, the all the situations that we live in our lives are now something more important. They are actually trials. Trials in which our patience, our diligence, our chastity, our perseverance, our temperance, our humility will be tested. So we need to know that the way in which we react to the different events in our life will reflect the quality of the inner work that we are doing. There, in the way we face every situation, is where the changes that we are making in our interior are going to be manifested. That is why it is so important that we learn to live, that we learn to combine states and events, because that way we are going to start like raising our levels of consciousness. Because before any situation, we are going to see that we have a perfect opportunity to free a lot of consciousness. Because if we had any situation, I can give you any example. At any situation, if you get to observe what is moving on within you and you can eliminate that and you can let your consciousness manifest, you are going to be rescuing a lot of consciousness and saving a lot of energy. So that is why it is so important. And what is the point here? To learn to observe and to understand that there are two types of personal events: the ones that are modifiable and the ones that are non-modifiable. And why it is important to understand this? Because we need to learn to distinguish when someone that we are living is modifiable or not. Modifiable events are those uncomfortable or unpleasant situations that happen to us but that we can modify. For example, that we, as I have the example, the picture here, we left the house in a hurry. Obviously, we were not in self-observation. We were not living the here and now. We left the house, and once we are on the street, we realize that we locked the house, leaving the keys inside the house. The whole house is locked, and the keys are inside. That is a personal event, because personal events are like the uncomfortable situations that we live. And we need to analyze that this situation, yes, is certainly unpleasant, but it is modifiable. And if we like understand this, we are going to, instead of letting all the psychological defects to manifest, We were hurry, we're impatient, and the one that is angry, and all of that. Instead of letting all of that manifest, you are going to understand this is something that I can change. So the best, I'm in self-observation, looking at the inner state, eliminating. I see that it is the event that I'm living, and it is something modifiable. Okay, what is like the correct inner state? Well, one in which I am looking for solving the situation, not arguing or complaining or any of that we do. No, we are there looking for how to solve that situation. And if we are eliminating all of that, we can look for a locksmith. We can do whatever we need to do, or break a window, or whatever we need to do, but we are going to do it in total control. Being patient, being patient, being calm, being quiet. Resolve the situation and moving on to our next event to also live that event in a correct inner state. And that is what we need to do with any situation that is modifiable. But what happens that sometimes we live certain certain kinds of personal events that are non-modifiable, and those are the unpleasant or uncomfortable situations that happens to us and that cannot be modified. For example, the death of a loved one or of a pet, or for example, that our partner was unfaithful to us with another person. These are things that no matter how hard we try, they are already an unchangeable fact. And if we get to understand that it is something that I cannot modify, then I'm going to understand that falling into wrong states of sadness or angry or past whatever is doesn't like have any sense. You see, just to sink into despair, just to terribly become identified with that event, is not going to solve anything. So we need to know that whether the situation is like modifiable or non-modifiable, reacting in a wrong way is what's actually what caused more tragedies to arise, because people who react in an absurd way to any event, any given situation, easily end up in a hospital, in a cemetery, or in jail. Because okay, your partner was unfaithful to you, but instead of making yourself full of angry and going feeling so jealous and going killing that person, for example, you are there eliminating. You understand that that is a non-modifiable situation, that is something that happened, and now you need just to keep calm and act in the most conscious way, whatever it is. If it is to say bye to that person, okay, or if it is to forgive that person, I don't know, because that is something that your consciousness needs to to tell you, to make you understand. But you are only going to experience that when you eliminate all the things that your ego has to say, and that way you are going to be able to listen to that subtle voice of your consciousness that is going to tell you what is the exact thing to do. And you see that the hospital, the cemeteries, and the jails are full of sincere wrong who reacted absurdly to external situations, to external events. A person who, when faced with an event in which he is, for example, publicly humiliated or slandered, can react in an absurd way and can end up in a hospital or in jail. And the problem is that we don't know how to avoid or to get out from the suffering in which we tend to get into because of our different personal events, especially from the non-modifiable ones. And we need to learn this, and there are two aspects that is important to consider and that are going to help us to get out from suffering when we are experiencing non-modifiable events, because we are going to experience them, and we need to learn how to maintain that control in those very hard situations. And the first thing will be not identifying ourselves with pain. This seems to be like hard, but we must remember that we fall into suffering only when we identify ourselves with pain. And the problem when we are faced with these circumstances that are like this so hard is that usually we identify with pain. We feed it with negative thoughts. We feed that pain with negative emotions. We surrender to the defects of despair, of grief, of self pity, of anger, of resentment. Thus, we make the pain grow, and we cannot remain in control. We cannot act consciously, and we cannot like learn from that experience, because from every experience, and I'm going to tell you that from the uh, worst or hardest experiences is from where we can rescue the greatest amount of consciousness and the greatest amount of wisdom. So we must remember that consciousness doesn't suffer. Consciousness observes and understands, because consciousness knows that pain is inevitably, but suffering is something optional. And we will discover that if we don't identify ourselves with the problem, the pain disappears. So, what we have to do when living these kind of situations? Well, put the same that we studied into practice. Maintain a correct state through self observation and psychological depth. And every time that pain comes to get us out of that state of harmony and serenity in which we find ourselves, we don't admit it, and we ask for death for each memory that is manifesting in my mind, for each emotion that I'm feeling, I'm eliminating that. Each sensation that I'm feeling in my body, I'm eliminating that. So we stay living the present moment, here and now. And the second thing that we need to do is to understand that everything passes. Everything that is born dies. Everything that we get at some point, we will have to lose it. Everything that comes at some point will go away. So clinging to things, not wanting to let go, is absurd. And it is what leads us to suffering. So we must learn to see life for what it is, like a movie full of sins. And when we learn to see life in that way, without identifying ourselves with all those sins, maintaining always an appropriate inner attitude, we will be able to draw the wisdom, like the lesson, the learning that each situation has for us. Many would like to have a perfect life. Many of us would like to go to a mountain or a monastery, separate from the world, and in that situation to achieve like inner peace and happiness and enlightenment. But the real truth is that only in this psychological gym that is our life itself, with all its events and all its circumstances, is from where we are going to rescue the wisdom, because there is like the material. All those circumstances are the ones that are going to make all those darkness, all of that darkness that is inside of us to come out, so we can observe it, so we can see what is actually inside of us, and we can eliminate all of that. But if we are there in a monastery, being in peace and calm, we are actually what is the name? When we are cheating ourselves, when we are self deluding ourselves, because we are not really getting to know ourselves. Getting to know ourselves is to know what moves in us in every situation and eliminate that, so that our consciousness can manifest in us. no matter the situation that we are living. That we are going to be conscious in a good situation, and we are going to be remain conscious in a very hard situation, because we have rescued all of our consciousness. And we need to like have this like in big external events would never be as important as the way that we react before them. That is the real important thing. What we have inside is what we will determine the quality of every situation that we live. And the best weapon that a man can use in life is a correct psychological state before any event. And well, this has been today's lecture. I hope, well, that I make it clear. And I want to invite you to our next lecture, which is the lecture number 20 of this course, the psychological country. You're going to see that that is a very interesting lecture. And it's going to be next Friday. And well, if you have any question about this topic, about the course, you can text there in the video comments, and I will be gladly solving any question that you have. Or you can contact me through the Facebook Messenger. I am soon going to make a WhatsApp group. So all of you who want to join the group, so we can change, how can I say that? So we can chat there and solve any concerns that you have, like more close. That will be soon, and I will be publishing this here in the page. So thank you very much to all of you who watched the video, and see you the next Sunday. Ciao, ciao.